What's up everyone, Stewart here, and in this video I want to show you a couple applications for the mid-side starter rack that we made a couple videos back. Alright, so let's just dive right in. To start off, we'll go into our user library, look in that custom effects, advanced processing, and grab the MS starter rack, and we'll just drag it down onto our channel. Now we want to show our chains here so that we can add devices to either just the mid or the side. And one of the first things I want to demonstrate is mid-side compression, because that can be really helpful on a bus or especially on a master if you need to kind of control the mid and the side separately. There are a couple different philosophies when it comes to processing audio that has been split up, whether it's split into mid or side or multiple frequency bands, especially with something like a compressor. Philosophy one is you basically want the compressors on the mid and the side or the different frequency bands doing the same thing, but you don't want them being triggered by the other bands, or you don't want the side compressor being triggered by the mid content. The other philosophy is, hey, I want to use them totally separately to just sculpt those individual bands or stereo areas separately and then blend them back together. So we're going to start with the separate approach, and then I'll show you how we could basically just use some macros to essentially link the controls and have quick, easy control over both channels, both mid and side channel simultaneously. All right, so let's go into our audio effects. Let's grab the glue compressor, because that's kind of a nice mastering style, master bus style compressor. So we'll drop one on the mid channel, and then I'll grab it, hold Option, and drag it onto the side channel. All right, and now we can use them independently. So let's go ahead and solo the side and listen to some of the music and try and dial in some compression. I think what I'm probably going to go for here is maybe try and accentuate some of the transients on the side, get them to try and jump out a little bit. So I'll probably start with, like a longer attack, a fairly quick release, low ratio, and now I'm going to start dialing down this threshold and see if we can get stuff to jump out a little bit. All right, so we saw what I did. I ended up playing around with the attack time a little bit. I shortened it up, shortened up the release, and once I had kind of the compression that I was looking for dialed in, I used some makeup gain so that when you bypass, there's not really a noticeable gain jump. And what I'm hearing is the edges of those snares are just popping out a little bit more. If you want to go a little harder with it, you could potentially do that and then maybe use a little parallel compression. So let's do that, and then let's flip over to our mid and check out, we'll maybe kind of go for a little bit of a similar approach, but probably slower times and just more of a gluing compression in the mid channel. so I think that feels pretty good. Again, I've just gone with a slow attack to let the transients through, a kind of medium slow release, so that it doesn't pump or get too dense, low ratio. You know what, I'm gonna jump back over to the side and just experiment with a higher ratio. The threshold in this is somewhat ratio dependent, so we'll probably have to bring the threshold down. But let's just play with that for a second. Yeah, I'm liking that a little bit more. It's getting the sides to pop just a little bit more than it was before. All right, so now let's check them out both together. So I'll play it with the compressor in, and then I'll just flip the rack off and we can hear it without the compressor. And just listen to what it's gonna do to the image and especially the transients on the sides. Now, I think it is adding a little bit of gain, so you know what, let's just select both of these and pull it down by like, oops, I guess you can't do that. Never tried that before. Pull them both down by 0.5 dB. See if that gets us in the right range. Yeah, so I think that's closer, and it's kind of bringing up the density a little bit, and it's opening up the stereo image. It's making especially like the ambience on the snares, when those snares hit, pop out a little bit more. But it's a little bit less of a blunt force tool than just changing the static mid-side balance, which could kind of make stuff sound phasey or weird or just a little bit thin. So it's just accentuating certain parts. All right, so that's one way that you could use this mid-side starter rack. So as a matter of fact, you know what? You might want to save that. I'm gonna go ahead and, well, let's rename this mid. I'm just gonna drag it out of the rack for a second. We'll rename this one side, drag it out. And just to kind of get a preset that you can save, I would drag one in on the side, rename it side, and that's really just so that, you know, you don't have to check what chain you've got selected. You know, you can just look at the compressor and say, oh, this is my side compressor. We'll drag one into the mid, and we'll rename it mid. All right, and we'll just kind of leave all the settings at their default values. Okay, and then let's rename this Unlinked MS Comp. All right, and we will go and we'll put that in our user library. So we'll just chuck this in here. Cool, there's that. All right. So let's go ahead and turn these off so they're not doing anything, but we can look at the settings. The other way you could do this is you could link them, which, if you're just looking to get some compression overall, but you don't want, you know, maybe there's a really present vocal, or there is a snare that's right down the middle, and you don't want every time that hits to kind of pull in the stereo image and narrow it up. Or maybe vice versa. Maybe there's something really loud in the stereo image that you don't want it to duck the center every time it hits. But you want basically the overall compression characteristic to be similar. What you could do is you could go ahead and we'll say map the attack to macro 1, release to macro 2, ratio to macro 3, threshold to, let's skip down to 5, makeup to 6. And yeah, you know what? Let's do our dry wet on 7 in case you want to do some parallel. That can be kind of nice. Don't think you really, I don't know, you could map the soft clip on and off to macro 4 or the range if you use that a lot. I tend not to use those that much in this compressor. So let's just go ahead and rename this with a space so that it's not anything, and we'll kind of color it dark. And then let's make all the compressor controls a similar color. And then, as you may recall, we've got this width control, which is basically just changing the balance. So if you want it a little wider, a little narrower, you could use that to change the balance. Let's go in and just set up, make sure all our mappings are the way we want them. I'm gonna dial in a finer range for the makeup. I don't ever foresee myself needing 20 dB of makeup gain. Probably 8 would be pushing it. So I'm gonna dial that into 8, and that'll just give us slightly finer control. And then we just wanna make sure we do the, get our ratio, 2 to 10 was attack, dry, wet, ratio, release, threshold. Yeah, let's give ourselves that full threshold range to play with. All right, cool. That's that one. Now we just got to jump back over to the side compressor and map it the same way. So we'll map attack to attack, release to release, ratio to ratio, threshold to threshold, makeup to makeup, and dry wet to dry wet. And again, just go back into your mappings, make sure everything matches up, change the side one to 8, and threshold -40, and our width is what it should be, and cool. All right, so this is good to go now. You probably want to leave the chain selector open so that you can see, you know, where your attack is. Although, you know what, since they're both mapped to the same thing, conveniently the values actually show up here. So you can see what those selected values are. So you know what, I lied. You can close this down and just make it nice and compact. All right, so let's give this a try. I lied. I'm going to leave one of these open just so I can see kind of how much gain reduction is going on. And you probably are going to want to flip back and forth. So again, attack. Let's give ourselves a longer attack to start with, kind of medium release, low ratio. Again, this is, you know, we're doing something on a whole track here, so we're not going crazy with our compression. We'll figure that out as we go. All right, so you can hear we're not actually doing a whole lot to the side, and you can also see that when we look at the gain reduction. So really this is just allowing us to kind of even out the balance between the mid and the side. So let's listen to it in and then bypass it. So it's kind of subtle, but I don't know if you can hear it. It's widening it up because what it's essentially doing is it's pulling back the gain of the mid signal and kind of leaving the side alone, because we're not hitting that threshold on the side. Now, one other further option you could explore if you want is not map everything the same way we have it, except the threshold, and be able to adjust your thresholds independently and kind of aim for basically the same amount of gain reduction. So you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and unmap my side threshold, and I'm going to play this. Look at what my midband is doing. I'm going to leave that threshold map here so I can adjust it. Look at what it's doing, and then aim for the same kind of gain reduction on the sideband. All right, so that's close. I've added a little makeup gain just to get things back to the same level. Let's listen to it and with the processing in, and then bypass it again. So to my ear now, that's actually maybe narrowing it a hair, but also more so than just that, it's kind of stabilizing the whole stereo image. All right. So there's a couple options for compression. Now, what you could do, of course, you'd probably just want to set these back to your default values. I don't know. Maybe set it this way. There. Leave your threshold up. Leave your makeup down. Your dry wet down. Parallel compression also, using the dry wet control, could be really interesting on that. Really crushing it and then bringing up sides and mid independently, and just keeping those very even, but still allowing the dynamics to poke through. So maybe try experimenting with that. All right, so there's that. I'm gonna leave this unlinked, and you just got to remember. Well, you know what? Actually, you know what you could do. You could say. You could move some stuff around. So let's unmap the dry wet. I'm almost done. I just keep having ideas. Let's unmap the dry wet there, and let's unmap it here. And then let's change this to that yellow, because what we're going to do is call that dry wet. And we'll map that, and then we'll map that, and we'll make sure that those are both from 0 to 100. They are good. And then what we'll do, we're moving all sorts of stuff around. We're going to unmap the makeup on both. I should have just thought this out ahead of time, but this is what happens when we do stuff in real time. I'm going to map this to macro 7 now. Make macro 7 our makeup. And then we got to go in and make sure that our makeup is set to a reasonable level, like 8 dB. Grand. There's our makeup. So then this is our mid threshold, right? So let's rename this mid thresh. And then we can rename this side thresh. And then what we'll do in the side is we'll map our threshold to side thresh. Now we've got control over both of them. Yay! And then we just got to check our mapping, side thresh from 0 to -40. Mid thresh from 0 to -40. Cool, so those will stay in sync. Now, last thing I'll say, you could change this if you don't want to turn your threshold knob up to turn the threshold down. You could change this mapping to go from -40 to 40, and this one to 0, -40 to 0. All right, and now you have to pull your threshold down. That's probably a little more intuitive. Let's do it that way. Okay, cool. Now let's rename this. I missed the L. I didn't miss the L. Linked. Stupid microphone cable on the keyboard. Who needs that there? Linked. MD. MS. We'll have to change that. Rename that, say one we already linked MS comp. And let's bring these both back to 0. Okay, cool. Go ahead and drop that in here. So now we've got an unlinked MS comp and a linked MS comp. I will also just point out that I changed the name of these after the fact to MP for minimum phase and LP for linear phase, because they really are. The one that uses the multiband dynamics, the crossover that uses the multiband dynamics is minimum phase. The one that uses the phase inversion cancellation is linear phase. So I just renamed those because it's what they are. Okay, that's it. That was a lot. Final thoughts, and then we're done with this, I swear. Other stuff you could do. You could throw your MS starter rack in, and then you could put some audio effects. You could put like some saturation just on the sides. Let's just try that really quick. I swear I'm almost done. All right, let's listen to the sides. All right, it's just making it a teeny bit denser. It's actually kind of adding a thickness that I really like. That's interesting. Never tried that before. That kind of stuff. Do the same kind of processing on the mid and side, but do them independently. Do different types of processing. Do whatever you want. There are no rules. Experiment. Have fun. But yeah, the MS compression can definitely be useful in mastering situations. Not something you need to use all the time. Nothing in mastering is something you need to use all the time, but it can be very useful in certain situations. So, that's it. That was a long one. Try and keep it shorter next time. Maybe not. We'll see. All right, take it easy.